Welcome, everyone, to the Audit and Finance June meeting. We have a full agenda tonight, and so if we can move forward. Ms. Roaring, if we start with 1.1, please.
Good evening, thank you. 1.1 is the Internal Claims Auditor Report.
Okay. Seeing no questions or comments, please go forward.
1.2 is the usual budget status report, treasurer's report, and other monthly reports for the board for the month of April.
Okay, for April's work. And seeing no comments, please go forward. 1.3.
1.3 is a proposed resolution to declare specific musical instruments and technology surplus and obsolete and dispose of those items.
So we do this every month. We have books and equipment that we do. Just one thing that stuck out in my mind with that, there on this list, district-wide, there's 600 Chromebooks that are listed to be declared obsolete. So it just seemed like a kind of a large number for me.
I'll ask Ms. Peterson if she'd like to add to that.
I'm going to defer to Mr. Place.
Please, Mr. Place.
So as you know, we are now a one-to-one initiative district in terms of Chromebooks, and we have over 12,500 devices between teachers and students. And this represents less than 5% of the wear and tear of devices over the course of time. We find it to be, we do try our best to make sure that parts of each device is used. If it comes back in broken, for example, if the keyboard is broken but the screen is good, we will use the screen and try to replace and fix as many as we can. But for us, a 5% wear and tear per year is probably to be more than expected. We probably should anticipate that around that every year. We will have that number of devices, especially if we continue the one-to-one initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 1.4.
1.4 is a resolution for to authorize the interim superintendent to execute for asbestos abatement in floor tile at Sacred Heart as part of our preparation for next school year. This is a bid award.
So now this is a project that was rebid, correct?
Yes.
And because it came in above our plan expense, and now we're in the range and we're good.
Yes,
Very
that's
good.
correct.
Thank you very much. 1.5, please.
1.5 is the bid award for bread and milk for our food service program.
1.6.
1.6 is a resolution to approve a budget amendment for the Newburgh Public Library. They've received $30,000 in bullet aid this year, and we'd like to recognize that revenue and allocate it appropriately so they can make some purchases for equipment.
Very good. Thank you. 1.7.
1.7 is an amendment to the general fund budget to recognize additional CARES funds that we are going to expend this fiscal year. Those funds expire in September of 22, so we want to make sure we are able to utilize them fully.
And this resolution is mainly software that is being
It will actually support additional hardware purchases.
hardware.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. 1.8, please.
1.8 is a budget amendment for 22-23 to recognize the remaining CARES funds available to our non-public schools so that they can expense those funds over the summer and fully access those dollars.
Okay. 1.9, budget transfer.
1.9 is a budget transfer for the month of May. This is a fairly significant dollar amount. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and respond to them at this time.
Well, I had brought up just that it seemed like a lot. Now, this is for sub-teachers is a bulk of the monies for this, in addition to some BOCES tuition.
So the transfer includes $851,000 combined for BOCES and private placement tuition associated with our exceptional learners, and the balance is $1.5 million to account for additional substitute expense that has been incurred, as well as anticipated through June 30th.
Okay. Thank you very much. 1.10.
1.10, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sharp.
Tax certs. This one is Imperial Motel. Imperial Motel? You just got to turn your mic on, sir. Yeah, but hit it again to mute it. When you're done.
Got it. You have two tax certs on your agenda, Imperial Motel. The board would have the usual memo from me recommending the settlement on this one. Should I speak towards? I guess I should do that. And very routine. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is a motel with, it's a small motel. It's not worth a great deal, and there's a very, very minimal reduction in assessment. That's before the board. We didn't know that initially when we intervened. If the board recalls, this is one of those that the school district intervenes in, so the board needs to approve the proposed settlement. Of course, I'll take any questions from board members or anybody else who is here regarding Imperial Motel. But as I say, it looks, I think it's pretty straightforward, and fortunately, very minimal dollars looking back as a refund.
1.11. Another tax cert. Not listed.
This one's Target.
This is Target. This is actually a very good resolution, but it's also a sign that this particular target was properly and pretty close to properly assessed in the first place. And I know that from all the other targets that are out there. We've settled, God, I've probably been involved in half a dozen over the last several years, most recently in Wallkill, and we had one up in Kingston, roughly the same size. You see here the last year's numbers, approximately $11.3 million, if I recall correctly, which is actually slightly higher than the settlement was in Wallkill, and a couple of $1 million higher than it was in Kingston. Kingston may have been a little bit smaller, but the bottom line is these are solid commercial enterprises, unlike some of the other ones that we need to deal with, where a lot of these big box stores and other department stores are really struggling. Target's not, and it's reflected in a solid assessment. Again, a fairly minimal reduction in assessment reduction, and therefore refund. Again, I'll take any questions from the board on that.
Next is
1.12 is an amendment to our county with Orange County Sheriff's Department. This added additional resource officers in 3 of our schools, starting on April 25th through the end of the year.
So this is going to be additional officer.
Yes.
Okay. Back to April. Oh, okay. When there was a need for it at that point. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. 1.13, change order.
1.13 is the change order for Nikki Jakes for the site work associated at NFA in preparation for CTE. Mr. Ramjug is here this evening if there are any questions.
Good evening, everyone. So this change order, the original contract for Nikki Diggs was for 4,805 cubic yards of rock removal, which includes milling of the stone and setting it to one side to prep for the foundation of Phase 2B, which is the actual construction of the building. In that context, it was found that there was more outcroppings of rock that needed to be grinded The price was negotiated from the original, it was $450 a yard. It was negotiated down to $300 a yard, a significant savings for the district. And initially, it was uncertain about the number of cubic yards, but that was eventually quantified as a not to exceed 1,005 cubic yards, and that work has been completed.
So I saw the presentation that's going to be before the full board, and it's done very well, and it explains this and other items going forward to very easily explained and understood. And I commend you for doing that, and hopefully these items will all go forward today.
Yeah, it's 100% positive. Savings moving forward. You know, one of the other benefits is that had this work not gotten done now, it would have delayed the foundation of the new building, Phase 2B. So we seized the moment, and of course, the savings spoke for themselves.
And one thing I noted, I believe, if I understood it correctly, that it's still, is it still $500,000 under budget,
Correct.
even with this expense?
Yes, that's correct. And there is also an unused allowance that's built into the budget for $50,000, and that will be applied to this change order. So it's even that much less.
Very good. Thank you. 1.14, it's probably a Mr. Ramjug item also. I would guess a proposal with CPL Architecture?
Correct. Since our original bidding at Heritage and Vales Gate, it surfaced just how impacting the inflationary environmental conditions are in terms of costs and estimates and budgets that we've had in place for quite some time. When we saw that taking place, we immediately started to monitor our costs for the Korean Tech Education Facility, which was, the budget is $70 million to build this brand new facility. And it's sustained under budget throughout the entire process up until these inflationary conditions prevailed. At the last calculation, it was over budget by $7 million, or a total of $77 million. In seeking to preserve the initial plan and integrity, the committee went to work to ascertain where we could reduce scope, therefore reduce the budget. And there were value engineering to be had in the event center. That preserved all of the vocational instructional spaces, kept them intact. So this proposal, as part of this process, it requires it to be redrawn, re-researched, and redesigned. And Clark Patterson Lee, in keeping with our fiscal prudence, proposed to do it for us on a time and material basis, not to exceed the $314K. So that's at the prevailing 6% rate, which was the same rate that they did the original drawings for. But again, it's being monitored on a not to exceed. So we'll be billed their costs for this work.
And the need for this is because the district changed its mind or its direction.
Well,
It wasn't that anything that
Yes.
CPL did.
We had a full design in place. We were ready to move forward to state ed, and then it didn't make sense for us to move forward with something we couldn't pay for. So we calculated, projected what that cost would be, and that's how much we've reduced now. And we probably have some other areas that we could look at also in this process. So it's a works in progress at this time. But inevitably, when we move those plans to the State Education Department for review and then, of course, bidding, we want to be confident that we're under budget.
Okay, very good, thank you. 1.15.
1.15 is a resolution to authorize funding of reserve accounts as we approach the end of the fiscal year. We're projecting fund balance, and this is these are the reserves that we are recommending funding in at an amount not to exceed.
So I got from this that we're not allocating any monies tonight. We're just setting a maximum amount that could be allocated in the future, correct?
Yes, as we close our books, we'll have a firmer picture of what those actual dollars are, and we would allocate based on this authorization.
Thank you. Okay, are we going to executive session now, or are we doing the other one first, Mr. McCoy? Because it was changed, it was flip-flopped.
It's up to you, sir.
Well, if we have enough time, we can do the instructional technology plan first, and then just end with the executive session.
It should only be a couple minutes.
All right, so let's go that route.
So the instructional technology plan is required every 3 years, and because of the pandemic, it had been postponed twice. And so this is the instructional technology plan for the next 3 years. And State Ed has done a significant change in their structure of how technology plans have to be presented to them. They required a district to pick 3 goals, and then how you're going to get to those goals over the 3 years. Our goals for the district, after having collaborated with stakeholders, which included parents and students and staff and a survey as well, our 3 areas for targeting is that we want to develop a linguistically and culturally responsive digital citizenship curriculum for grades K through 5, which we have been also approved for a learning technology grant, which will pay for the majority of the cost of that. We also are looking to be able to increase or create a digital hub for that work so that teachers across the district have access to digital resources in multiple languages and in culturally responsive ways. And again, that was mostly paid through a grant that we already have received. Finally, we also have to indicate how we are going to maintain our infrastructure. And for us, we are looking to upgrade our access points over the course of the next 3 years in a total amount estimated of around $1 million. We are then going to also implement our security upgrades that we have in order to be more in alignment with international standards, and that is around $250,000 over the 3 years. And then we are also looking at replacing 25% of our student and educator devices on an annual basis. We were talking about this before, a replacement cycle of around 4 years. In order to do that, we need to begin to look at having replacement cycles within the budget. We have used other resources, whether it be the Electronic Connectivity Fund or other resources from the state and federal government over the last several years, rather than including that in the general fund. We hope that we will still be able to have some grants and other funds available to pay for this, but it'll be around a $5 million cost to continue to do that over the next 3 years. And so that is the technology plan in bulk and in short for you. It is essentially 3 goals, around a $7 million price tag for those 3 goals, of which about $1 million of that will be covered through grants. And then the rest of it will have to be covered either through general fund or through other resources that become available over the next 3 years.
So that's a 3-year projection of costs?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and yeah, go ahead, Ms. Green.
You said that you were, part of this plan is to improve the infrastructure throughout the district. Does that mean that you're going to look at each school? Because there's some schools where the reception in those buildings or near the building, horrible. Example, Bombville. So when you say looking at infrastructure, are you going to look at the infrastructure in all the school buildings?
That's correct. So our plan over time is to continue to be able to replace the access points, which allow the devices to connect so that when students are in the classroom and teachers are working, that they'll be able to connect to the internet and to be able to have ubiquitous access across the district. That is part of the replacement cycle that has to continue to occur over time. And in the past, we have done that through things like surplus or whether we get extra grants for that. But we're hoping to be able to build in a cycle of replacement over the next 3 years.
I just want to add
Thank
to
you.
Mr. Place's answer as well. What we struggle with sometime, Bombville, Fostertown, Gartertown, I know for a fact, we have very limited coverage, and it's cell coverage versus our access points. So our in-building access points, which is a part of our technology plan, will assist with accessing our district-wide internet, but it is not going to improve overall cell coverage. Those buildings, we've tried to, because of where they're located and what is available with towers in the area, it's not going to improve those types of things. So I just want to be transparent about that.
Thank you.
So I just have a rough question in reference to, I'm going to say the pandemic or pandemic funding. I mean, prior to this, there probably was not much instructional technology being helped to pay for by the state in grants and things like that. So is that changed now, or is that still going on with the state?
So the answer in short is yes, but only for a short period of time, through about the end of 2024, and this plan goes through 2025. So the question is, how do you begin to build in cycles within your general fund? Or do we have to consider something that it isn't a one-to-one initiative anymore because we're not in the pandemic? Do we go to something like grades, pick a number, grades K through 5, grades through 6, where the case stays in the district, stays in the classrooms, and then the rest of them go home with students in middle school and high school? Those are questions that will have to be asked over time as funding becomes clearer, either from the state and federal government, if they're going to continue to challenge us to continue to do these one-to-one initiatives.
Yeah. Hopefully we can hold off about making that decision for a little bit to see what goes. Okay. You good, Ms. Ageen? Okay, so now we have an executive session to move forward with.
The request is that the committee act to move into executive session to meet with our internal and external auditors this evening who have joined us virtually.
Yes, let's please go forward. We need to vote or no? No? Okay.